Hello, and welcome to Board Game TV, and we're going to do another real quick movie list, this time featuring the Die Hard movies. It's going to be a short list, only 5. Of course, Die Hard franchise starring Bruce Willis. It's been around since 88, 89. I remember when I actually was alive when the first Die Hard came out at the movie theater, and I remember it being an unexpected hit. It's what put Bruce Willis on the map. If you don't know who Bruce Willis is, he was basically a TV actor. He even had he was on an episode of Miami Vice. And then he kind of made it big with this show Moonlighting. And Moonlighting was a hit show in the 80s. It had him and Sybil Shepherd, I believe her name was. It was a show my mom liked. I didn't care for it. I thought maybe a few parts of it were funny. He was like a part of a detective agency. And it was a hit show. But anytime somebody becomes a big star on TV, eventually the movies are going to come calling. And Die Hard originally was supposed to be an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, if you can believe it or not. I actually think it started out as the second Commando movie, which I actually liked the first Commando. It's just fun 80s cheese, man. You can't get no better than Commando and Arnold's one-liners. But for whatever reason, Arnold didn't do it, or something came up and he couldn't do it, and so they kind of changed the movie around, and a lot of people fought for this role, but Bruce Willis ended up getting it. And then of course this movie was a big hit, and it takes place during Christmas, so it's considered one of the most popular Christmas movies. And after that, Bruce Willis would eventually leave TV and go on to star in many movies and be a big mega movie star for a while, until his career kind of went into a downturn later on in his life. But Die Hard was a huge success. As you can tell, it has 4 sequels, intermittent years apart for some. Is basically Bruce Willis plays John McClane. Depending on which movie it is, he's a New York City cop. I think for the most part he's a New York City cop. I think in part 2 he's LA for some weird reason. And the first one was directed by John McTiernan, and so it was a big hit. 20th Century Fox, of course. Here comes the sequels. And so I grew up with these movies. I saw them when they came out. My daughter Isabella's with me. She has never really seen them before, and so she watched them and she got her take on it. So we have a take from her, a new fan who's never really been a Bruce Willis fan, who's never seen much of his movies, who's never grew up with the Die Hards, and then my opinion, who I grew up with the Die Hards, and you know, I even had the Die Hard trilogy on PlayStation 1. I love the Die Hards. I think all of the movies are good except for my number 5 pick. After that, all the movies to me are good to pretty damn good. So we'll just go right into it, do a real quick thing real quick, and we'll both give our least favorite of the Die Hard movies. And I think that would be unanimous. My opinion should be the same as basically most people on the planet Earth. My least favorite is the last Die Hard, Die Hard 5, A Good Day to Die Hard. This movie was made a few years, several years actually, after the 4th Die Hard, which was kind of a comeback for the series. And it stars Bruce Willis as John McClane, and his son, played by Jai Courtney, who, I mean, I'm not a big fan of his as an actor, is a spy in Russia, and John McClane basically goes to Russia and wreaks havoc there to kind of help him out and get him out of the situation he's in. It tries to be kind of like a Bourne Identity type movie, where a spy political thing. And a lot of it, John McClane kind of takes a backstage to his son, who's the spy for in the CIA for it, and it takes place in Russia. That's the last thing you'd ever think you'd hear you say was Die Hard in Russia. And yeah, this movie just doesn't fit the franchise. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Bruce Willis feels like he phones it in. There's a lot of CG in this and a lot of slow motion. And you get the feeling that if they had made this movie back in '89, the stunts that they did with CG in this would be done in real life back then. And they didn't use slow motion in any of the other movies. So this one just got problems all the way around. The script is not good. John McClane's not that good. He kind of takes a back seat. The environment of Russia is not that good. I get you're trying to be something different, but kind of like a spy political thriller with a twist with John McClane. And of course, Jai Courtney has all the charisma of a rock, so yeah, it's not going to go well. If they wanted, their intent was for him to carry on the franchise as Jack McClane or John McClane Jr., whatever they're calling him. Yeah, that definitely didn't happen. That's not going to happen. The only bright spot to this movie is the one Russian bad guy who kind of gets killed like halfway through. He's pretty funny. The car chase, you know, I gotta admit, the car chase stuff is pretty good. It's pretty exciting, but it just drags on, and you can tell a lot of it is just CGI at times. And so, yeah, that's kind of dull there. And there was a deleted scene where they had his daughter from Part 4 make a cameo. Why they cut that out of the movie, I'll never know. So they shouldn't have did that. But yeah, that's my least favorite Die Hard. It's the one I really don't. If I ever want to watch Die Hard movies, it's the one I just tend not to watch. The only time I'll ever watch it is if like I'm just doing a marathon of the Die Hards, just to be a completionist, and that's it. It's completely unforgettable. It's a couple years old now, so you know the movie was not a success. That's why there hasn't been another one. And even though there's been talks from time to time of making a Die Hard 6, which I think they should do while Bruce Willis still is able to do it, but just do it right this time. Issa, what's your least favorite?
Also, Die Hard 5. So, John in the movie, during the car chase scene, it looks like he's like, there's so many wrecks going on, and it's like he has no regard for anyone else's life. Like, I thought he was supposed to be like a good guy, but he's kind of not being a good guy at that moment. The villain is bad. In the other movies, you see more of the villain, and which because the main villain, like he said, that dies later on in the movie, you don't know anything about him. You don't even really know his name. Like, I don't remember his name.
Yeah. Like,
the only thing I remember is that he wanted to be a dancer, but that's it. He was not interesting. And there's movies that do, like, okay, Part 5 is 100% a spy movie. It's not a cop movie anymore. You can do spy movies right, like, that involve Russia, like Salt or Red Sparrow do really well when, having Russia involved. But this movie does not do well. The environment is so bland. And yeah, and the car chase that happened.
They're walking around Chernobyl without a radiation suit.
Yeah! And
yeah, it'd be fine.
I'm like, they're gonna die from radiation poisoning. That's probably why the series.
The car wrecks, they just walk away from them like they're nothing.
Yeah, and the car chase did go on for way too long. I didn't even notice any of the CG because I zoned out because I was so bored. I was like, I don't like car chases, so I don't know what's going on. And in the movie, Bruce Willis looked so bored and so tired, like he wanted to just be like, okay, we're done filming for today, like whatever. Like he did not want to do anything. The movie was just so bland, but that's it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, well, moving on to my fourth pick on this list is going to be Die Hard 2: Die Harder. Now, this has been universally up until Die Hard 5 came out. Die Hard 2: Die Harder was universally considered to be the weakest of the bunch, especially when you talk about the original trilogy. It's not a bad movie. It just has the misfortune of trying to follow up the first Die Hard, which was so good, and it can't live up to it. It takes place in Washington, D.C. He's waiting on his wife's plane. He's a L.A. cop who used to be a New York cop, but apparently after the first movie, he transferred to L.A. to go out there and live with Holly. And now he's in Washington, D.C., getting involved in their stuff at the airport. It's got an interesting concept, and it's in the wintertime with the snow. Unlike the first one, which was on Christmas movie, but it was in California. This one's the snow. His wife, unlike in the first one, she's stuck on the plane most of the movie, and she just kind of feels like an afterthought. Like, yeah, we had to get her in here. And the reporter from the first movie, yeah, we got to get him in here. You could have just cut that whole thing out of the movie. He gets a little bit more emotional in this movie, and it doesn't quite pull it off. There are a few bad plate special effects. The part where he's in the ejector chair seat and he ejects out of the plane and the plane blows up, that's fake as hell. You can tell that's just so bad. Even especially with today's modern technology, with it being on Blu-ray, you can really tell. Maybe not so much back then, but you can tell. But other than that, John McClane, he's on point. He fits his character. He's the bad guys are actually pretty cool. Bill Sadler does a real good bad guy. The whole drug lord plot's actually interesting. The whole airport environment, he's stuck in an environment. The first one and the second one still followed that stuck in an environment formula. They finally would break free from that in part 3 because they realized you only do that so many times. But the second movie here is just basically trying to copy the first movie with a few little minor differences here and there. Of course, it doesn't pull it off as well. It doesn't succeed. It's directed by Rennie Harlin, who I actually like a lot of Rennie Harlin's movies. Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Prison, and a few others. And so he does do a good job directing. This is early in his career, and the action is pretty good. It's just nowhere near as good as the first one, and it tries so hard to be a carbon copy of the first one, except it tries to up it, but it really just doesn't. So, not a bad movie. I won't, like, if I'm watching Die Hard movies, I won't skip part 2. I'll usually watch part 2 because it's entertaining, but it's not as good to me as any of the other ones. So that's my number 4. Issa, what's your number 4?
Also Die Hard 2.
Okay.
But I think that Die Hard 2 is boring.
Okay.
So, I don't think the airport is a good environment at all. Just because I watch a lot of movies and I've seen airport terrorism done so many times. And it's always the same stuff. So, like, if somebody's stuck in a building like the first one, you can do a lot with that. Or if a whole city, like, you can do a lot with that. But airports, obviously, oh no, plane gonna blow up, oh no. That's it. That's all you have.
Yeah, he has no reason to get involved in this one. He just happens to be sitting at a table, smoking a cigarette, and sees maybe something a little bit shady go on, and then he just decides to just follow up and get involved with it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
And the beginning of the movie is good, and the fight scene in the little luggage place is really good, but the whole reporter thing, and then later in the movie, it's very boring. And I don't even like the bad guy. I don't even remember what he looks like. At all. Maybe it's because all the villains up till like part 5 are all blonde and German, but I don't know.
He wasn't blonde and German. He was American. He was the soldier. Remember, he was doing the naked kung fu in the.
Okay, I remember what he looked like
in the beginning of the thing.
Okay, my bad. But also it has like a bad twist. There's kind of a twist in it, but like I didn't expect it, but it was stupid and didn't make sense. Yeah, and the villain was bad, and the movie was boring. But you know what? Not a bad movie if you haven't seen the other ones to compare it to. But just watch it by itself, and it's a good movie if you just watch it by itself. But compared to the first one or the third one, it's definitely the weakest.
Okay. All right, so my third favorite of the bunch, and this is where I'm going to get a lot of flack, a lot of controversy. My number 3 pick is the original Die Hard. Now, I know the original Die Hard is probably considered the best of the series, and hey, I'm not going to argue with you about it. It just so happens that there are 2 others I just like better. Now, one reason of that is because it's probably because I've seen the original Die Hard so many times. I mean, I've seen the first Die Hard more than any of the other Die Hards, just because it's been around longer, and I've watched it a lot, especially when I was a real fan of the series. I used to watch it a lot. I just don't know how to. Maybe I have my sentimental favorite, which is my number 1 pick. Okay, and I think you can understand that sentimental feelings can drive movies to be number 1 that really kind of shouldn't be number 1. But my number 2 pick will probably surprise you, but yeah, the first Die Hard for me, hey, is a great movie. John McTiernan is a fantastic director. You know, he's always good. Bruce Willis is excellent. Hans Gruber is probably one of the best known villains in movie history. Alexander Goodenough as oh man, what was his? He's the blonde villain, the blonde long-haired one. Hans' number 1 guy. He's very good in it. The stunts are all fantastic. You feel like, you know, up until this time, I know it seems like there's been a million movies like this. But actually, up until this movie right here, there wasn't. There wasn't a lot of man trapped in building, you know, lone wolf type thing like this movie. Die Hard was kind of an original for its time. You know, it did spawn a bunch of copies. Sudden death. I mean, you're trapped in a hockey stadium with terrorists taking over or gonna blow it up. You know, stuff like that. Under siege, you're on a boat. Terrorists taking over the boat, gonna blow it up. You know, so it spawned a lot of copies. But Die Hard is the original and the best. But I just like 2 others that I like more because I probably just because I've seen the first Die Hard so many times. But I can't argue with anybody who says Die Hard 1 is the best one of the series, because, you know, it introduces to John McClane. Bruce Willis is fantastic, and it's just a well done, great, excellent movie. And yeah, but I have to put it number 3 on my list. Issa, what's your number 3?
Die Hard 4.
Okay.
I really like Die Hard 4. It's just that it's number 3. Justin Long is amazing. He is so funny. I never really liked Jeepers Creepers, but he's very good in this movie. And the villain was okay, so that's probably why I put it lower, but it has a really good concept. The whole firewall thing, or fire sale, the whole fire sale thing is really interesting to me. And the fight scenes are really good. And yeah, I feel like Justin Long and Bruce Willis had good chemistry, so it worked pretty well. And his daughter being in there was kind of like there wasn't really a reason other to just be, oh, that's why Bruce Willis going after them. But Mary Elizabeth Winstead does really good as Lucy McClane. That's all.
Alright, so my number 2 is Die Hard 4, Live Free or Die Hard. The Die Hard franchise had kind of ended in 95, and it had been gone for a long time, and they brought it back with Die Hard 4 after many years. And I think they did a fantastic job. I like Bruce Willis as an older, more grizzled mature. I guess you call him more world weary. You know, his marriage has gone to part. His kids don't have nothing to do with him. All he does is be basically a cop 24/7. And if you watch the movie closely, you can in time between Die Hard 3 and Die Hard 4, he hasn't really done anything spectacular like he has in the movies. His career has been quiet for the most part. Um, so he kind of a little bit more of a laid back type thing. But then as the movie goes on, you can tell more and more he's enjoying being in the center of the action and getting into it. I thought the plot was well done. A lot to do with the whole 9/11. Fits the movie. It was all 4th of July, so it's another holiday movie for the diehards. The action's pretty good. My only complaint about the action is the part with the jet trying to shoot him off the bridge. I thought that was a little stupid and over and dumb.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that CG stuff right there, I didn't care for that. But other than that, I think the movie's really good. I love the dynamic between him and Justin Long. I think that's pretty good. I love the dynamic between him and his daughter, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who I like. You know, she plays in a lot of movies that I like. You know, the Cloverfield sequel, the Thing prequel, Death Proof. So I've always liked Mary Elizabeth, and I wish she'd appear in more stuff. And I liked her in this as Lucy McLean. I just liked Die Hard 4. It was just, I think because it had been such a long time, you never expected another Die Hard, or there had been talks of another Die Hard for years, and it never happened. So you're like, it's never going to happen. And finally, out of the blue, it happens, and it's actually done really well. It's a pretty good movie, and the plot's good, the acting's good, the action's good, and you can tell Bruce Willis, you can tell he had fun with this again, and he enjoyed it. And you just gotta love it, man. You just gotta love how John McClane, the bad guy played by Timothy, I can't remember his last name, he's a pretty good bad guy in this. He's just an elitist who thinks he's better than everybody else and do everything. And here comes old blue collar John McClane, and you can tell that Timothy is underneath all his cool cockiness. You can tell he's scared of McClane because he knows McClane's. Or put a bullet in him like nobody's business. That McClane will stomp a mud hole in him. That he can't do nothing to stop McClane because McClane's just better than him. And you get that vibe from his villain character the whole movie, and it's pretty good. I like it. So my number 2, may be controversial, is Die Hard 4: Live Free or Die Hard. So what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Die Hard 3. I love Samuel L. Jackson. Even before watching the Tarantino movies, I like Samuel L. Jackson. He's always been so funny in every movie that he's been in. And then after watching the Tarantino movies, I just loved him even more because I think it really shows that Samuel L. Jackson can literally play anybody, ever. And Samuel L. Jackson just makes the movie so good. Like, if Samuel L. Jackson wasn't in the movie, I don't even think it would be that good of a movie. I really like the Mad Bomber thing that they have going because I watch Batman the Animated Series, and there's an episode called The Mad Bomber. And it's like the exact same where, if you don't go there in time, I'm going to blow this place up. Except with Batman, it's ransom. And in this situation, I mean, it's not really money.
Well, it is, but
it's more of a trick, And I really liked it. I loved the whole chase scene. Oh, John McClane gotta go here, but Samuel Jackson gotta go here. And then they answer the phone, but the guy's tricking them. And the villain's done really well, too. I really like Part 3's villain. I think he's really calm, smart. I feel like the girl, though, that's a villain, she reminds me a lot of Cate Blanchett's villain from Indiana Jones, Crystal Skull. Yeah. They also look alike, but I did not care for her. She wasn't really in there to do anything. She had like 2 lines in the whole movie. So they could have taken her out and it would have changed anything. But you can tell Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis have good chemistry and they're really enjoying doing the movie. So that's why part 3 is my second pick.
Okay. Okay, so my number 1 should be no surprise. My number 1 is Die Hard 3, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Die Hard with a Vengeance has always been and will always be my favorite Die Hard movie. Came out in around 95, a few years after Die Hard 2. Now, they could have stuck with the same formula with the Die Hard series. 1 took place in a skyscraper. 2 took place in an airport. 3 could have took place in an isolated area, but they decided to buck the trend and do something different. And also, whereas in part 1 and 2, Bruce Willis was by himself, well, now he has somebody with him the whole time. Directed by John McTiernan, part 3 is a direct sequel to the first one. The bad guy, played by Jeremy Irons, is Simon Peter Gruber, Hans Gruber's brother. It's sort of a revenge robbery tale. And it is just a fun movie. The chemistry, like Issa said, between Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis is fantastic. I love the fact that he's back in New York City, and he's now back a New York City cop. He's separated from Holly, his wife. He's a drunk. He's on suspension. He's your typical burned out police officer. He's probably at the lowest point he's ever been at the start of this movie. And along comes the brother of the man he killed in a famous incident several years ago to get revenge. The whole thing of him having to go all around New York instead of being in one set location is great. I love that he's not by himself anymore. I love the dynamic between him and Samuel L. Jackson. I love the whole Mad Bomber plot. I think it is pretty good. I think the story is slick, where it turns out to really just be a heist, and because he's a Gruber, but he wants revenge. I think Bruce Willis is fantastic in this movie. I think he's probably at his best. He knows the character really good now, and he plays him fantastically. There's something we haven't talked about with any of the Die Hard movies, but Michael Kamen is the guy who did the music for 1, and Die Hard 1 has a good score. Die Hard 3, however, Michael Kamen reprises doing the score for Die Hard 3. Marco Beltrami would do the score for parts 4 and 5. And he did a good job. He incorporated a lot of Michael Kamen's original stuff into the score. But I love the score for Die Hard 3. It's my favorite of the series. I think Michael Kamen does a fantastic job, especially incorporating, all the saints go marching in and all that stuff. It's my sentimental favorite. It's what made me want to be what I ended up becoming later on. I'm not going to get any more into that, but that's why. I just love it. It's fantastic. It's action-packed. I love the twists and turns the story takes. I just love the whole we hate each other and then we end up kind of becoming friends dynamic between Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. It's just a great movie. And then you got a lot of side characters, like from the police force, like his lieutenant and his other detectives that he works with. They're not useless. They all go around and do stuff, and it's a good movie, and I like it. It's not the man stuck in a hostage situation or stuck in one location type thing. It is a crime drama type movie, a cop movie, more along the natural lines of a cop movie, but it's just done pretty good by Bruce Willis and John McTiernan on their handling of it. So it does very much differ from the first Die Hard, where it's basically a completely different movie, but they have links to each other, and it is a direct sequel to the first one. And Die Hard 3 will always probably be my favorite, and it's sentimental mostly, but I just love the movie, and I think it is fantastic. So Issa, what's your number one?
Obviously the first one, but I do have to agree, if I didn't like the first one so much, then Die Hard 3 would definitely be my favorite, but I do really like the first one. I had never seen Die Hard before. Like, I knew what it was and I heard about it and oh, Bruce Willis, but I never seen it. So going in, I really like John McClane's attitude and his whole I'm gonna get all these people out of here and show you who's boss. That is just, and his whole where he picks up the dead guy's walkie-talkie and starts talking to Hans Gruber through it, it's kind of a new idea. Like, I had never seen that before, but I thought it was so funny. And
it's funny to me that what's old is new again. You know, you said you had never seen anything like that before, but after this movie came out, there were a gazillion copycat movies.
Right.
But you weren't around for any of the copycat movies.
I watched the copycat movies. And I actually had never, or as far as I could think, that I hadn't seen a movie where it's one person stuck in a place with a whole bunch of bad guys, unless it was like a scary movie like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something like that. Which, I don't really watch cop movies, so, you know, I don't really know much about it, but, and Alan Rickman does phenomenal as the villain. His villain is definitely, like, one of the best villains, like, ever to exist. He has such a, like, his voice is so, like, familiar, and I had never seen the Harry Potter movies, so I didn't really know anything about Alan Rickman.
That movie, Die Hard made Alec Rickman a star as well.
Yeah.
It not only launched Bruce Willis, but it launched Alec Rickman as well.
And so I really like it. Yeah, it was a really good movie, and I think everybody in the movie did really well.
Christmas classic?
Yeah.
Yeah, Christmas classic. Okay, well that's our take on the Die Hard movies. Again, my list is 5, 2, 1, 4, and 3. And Issa's is what, 5, 2,
4, 3, 1.
3, 1. As far as the best. So which one's your favorite? Don't hate on me too much for not liking the first one the best. Now, for those of you who don't know, Die Hard with a Vengeance has a different ending. The original ending, which is on the DVD, is a much darker ending and kind of much more of a downer ending. But the ending that they put in the movie, I'm happy with. I actually like the new ending better than the one. I know a lot of people like the original ending better. I think the new ending kind of fits the movie more. There's no big break in time between if you've never seen the original ending, it's basically, it's been a while. There's a time break between the part where the ship blows up and Bruce Willis gets off, and then the end where he confronts Simon Peter in a German restaurant a couple years later and makes him start guessing what riddles right. And if he guesses the riddles wrong, he's going to kill Simon. He's going to kill him. And so that's basically, you know, he ends up killing him. John McClane gets his revenge. It doesn't fit the character, in kind of, to me. It feels like McClane would get revenge or kill him in the moment of the action, but not, you know, plan for 2 years or however long it was and then try to get his revenge later on him. So I agree with them removing the original ending and putting the ending they have in there in it. But yeah, fantastic movie series. If you've never seen the Die Hard movies, Watch them all. Watch them all, even part 5, so you can get a taste of the absolute what the series has gone to, what it could sink to what it can be as far as greatness goes. They're classics for the most part. I think 1 and 3 are really considered the classics of the movies. I think 1 and 3 are considered probably the best. It's usually a tie between which one you like better, 1 and 3. Most time 1 wins out. But yeah, great movies. If you've ever seen Bruce Willis lately in some movies and he kind of like, watch these. You see him do phenomenal acting jobs in these early movies. So that's our Die Hard franchise ranking. Hope you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you next time. Until then, have fun.